slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. And hello, everybody. Welcome to the IALIC Research Forum. My name is Claudia Borghetti. I work at University of Bologna in Italy, and I'm part of the IALIC Management Committee. In the following slides, we are showing what the Research Forum is. Okay, for those of who have never participated in the association research forums before, we have collected here some information about our previous initiatives. As you can see here, we started organizing these forums at the Helsinki Annual Conference in 2018, and since then, these sessions have been always included in the program of the IALIC conferences. Basically, the Research Forum is a dedicated space where conference participants can exchange ideas on their current research interests and explore possibilities for future collaboration. So far, the Research Forum has always had different formats. In Helsinki, 3 different research projects were presented. In Valencia, the year later, we had an invited speaker, Francesco Girotti, who helped us exploring European funding programs in the field of multilingualism and interculturality. And last year, at the symposium Issues, Controversies and Difficult Questions, we had our first online, of course, forum, and also very lively discussions about some of the papers presented in the conference. Today, we are experiencing yet another format. First of all, there are 3 of us today. As you see, I will be supported by Ramzi Marabet, who is also part of the IALIC Management Committee, and by Mario Molina Nar, who is one of the fantastic organizers of this conference. Alexander Ramirez apologized, but he had a little health issue, nothing serious, fortunately, but cannot be with us today. So how it works today, in the following slides, we will provide a number of inputs related to the conference themes as starting points for our discussions and exchange of ideas. You are invited, well, all of us are invited to take the floor either by raising our hands or using the chat. And well, actually, the first option is very much preferred as it makes the discussion more lively. And toward the end, we will make a short summary of the forum discussions. Finally, since one of the aim of the forum is getting to know each other and networking, please remember to introduce yourself briefly, name and institution, when intervening for the first time. And another request, if I can, it would be very nice if we kept our cameras on during the discussion. So I would start with the first input. Okay, yeah. So let's start from the conference subtitle. And Ramzi has reported the content of this slide in the chat because at a later stage we would like to take the slide off and see all the faces of the participants in this forum. Anyhow, this extract is taken from an article written by a university student in UK and published online by a movement for critical social justice. The title of the article is Newspeak on Campus. And reading through the extract, and then we can start discussing it. In one particular master's module, my lecturer gave us a snowballing list of words we were no longer allowed to use. Global and local are two words on the taboo list. Apparently, the words global and local are offensive to locals, as it implies that superiority of the cosmopolitan global elites. Ironically, this seems to mean that I'm no longer allowed to utter the name of the department in which I'm studying, global studies. There are many questions that we may ask about this extract and related issues, but we are particularly interested today to discuss with you all how you position yourself. So what is your position on this specific issue of using the terms global and local in education and in research in your specific fields, so language, culture, and interculturality. And also, we can take inspiration from this extract to go beyond the issue of local and global, and wondering to what extent research, education, and societies at large benefit from political correctness, which is, of course, an issue for language uses in whatever language. I'm very curious to start discussing these things with the group. Ramzi, can you take the slide?
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing the slides now. If you want to read the quote again, you can find it in the chat.
Oh, now I see some faces. Hello, everybody. Ciao, Malcolm. Ciao, Emilia, Eleanor, Anna, Cristina. Ciao, ciao a tutti. Who is breaking the ice?
Okay, well,
I think Malcolm will.
Yeah.
Sorry, Malcolm, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'd just say I haven't come across this before, and I don't have any problem myself hearing these words, or I have used them in the past. I confess, and I think it depends to an extent on the context. I mean, how and where the words are used, I think, matters. I do take issue with the idea of globalization, which is often the starting point, for example, of postgraduate assignments. And I think globalization in particular is something I feel particularly critically disposed towards. But these two terms, I don't have a problem with. I find this bizarre. Am I supposed to say who I am? I think I am, haven't I? So I'm Malcolm MacDonald at University of Warwick. I'm editor of Language and Intercultural Communication, which is our journal.
Grazie.
Yeah.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Malcolm. Yeah, well, we have a raised hand, Claudia, from Emilia. Do you want to take the mic?
Emilia, just...
Hi, sorry, I was having some technical difficulties.
No problem.
Thank you. So my name is Emilia, and I'm also an English teacher here at Universidad de los Andes. And I wanted to comment on the second question and ask about the first. So I think that political correctness can help us challenge the way we think, and in that way be a tool to to challenge past assumptions. But I think also, as we see it, that is also an evolving, like the terminology evolves, and to take a stance of accepting that terminology is evolving. I don't think we're ever at the final stage of this is the one right thing. But my question to everybody, I don't know if people know, so what would be the alternative to local and global? Like if somebody thinks that that is not an appropriate framework, I don't know if others have, yeah, I would be curious to hear your input if you have alternative suggestions that somebody thinks are better suited. Thanks.
Is there anybody with an idea to answer Emilia's question? In case you agree with the idea that we should replace this terminology, which I'm not sure at all.
Right. I was actually going to say that it's a matter of personal, I don't know, choice, probably. Like, I've heard a lot of people disagree with terminology that I use all the time, because those terms are normal in my discipline, for example, but they mean something else in a different discipline. So I think it's a matter of personal choice. I personally wouldn't say that those words need to be changed, but again, that's my personal opinion, right?
Yeah. May I also add my opinion? If no, there's Beatrice. Sorry, Beatrice, you first.
Just a quick word here. You know, I am pretty much, you know, after Malcolm's opinion, I feel, you know, that initially in a first approach, I wouldn't have like much trouble with the concepts. However, when I saw the global concept, I was like, oh, wow, what's this? So, you know, it made me think that if they were trying to merge the word into global, well, something should have been happening around the global and the local, right? And maybe I would also like someone to help me to shed light on the concept of global, because now you see that more and more. And when you're reading maybe an article or a book chapter, you see that sometimes the concept is taken for granted. So people do not explain or say, okay, my positioning on global issues are this and that. No, but they just approach the concept. So I would have, you know, another problem there, and maybe I can have some of your opinions about that. And I think that Manuela is asking to please put the PowerPoint again to check on the questions. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Manuela. Yes, there's the contents of the slide are in the chat box. So you should see it again. If you have problems, please tell me, and we will show the slide again for a moment. And Prue, I see that your hand is on.
Yeah, thank you, Claudia, for that question. I must say it took me a while to think about what I really think about this question, because it's not easy, and I guess that's why we were all stunned at the beginning. And I know that Manuela has got a lot to say about these two concepts.
Yeah.
But I think what is interesting too is I think I agree with Malcolm that it's an extremely strange position to take, because how can you understand your own context without putting it into the broader society in which you live and the forces which are operating on that society. So if you live in a community, you don't live in isolation unless you try and be Amish and take yourself to Colombia and set up a new community there. I read the other day that those Amish people are moving from the US and starting to set up a new community in I think it's the west of Colombia towards Venezuela, in order to re-establish themselves. But how can you possibly manage to live in your community without understanding and recognizing the outside forces? So I was just talking to a student this morning, and we were talking about the northeast of the UK, where I live in Durham, as being quite monocultural, to stereotype essentialize the context. But in fact, she was saying that the majority of Syrian refugees coming into the UK are being settled in County Durham. And this is in a particular part of County Durham, one particular town, Middlesbrough, and there have already been racist acts against Syrian refugees in Middlesbrough. So we can see that when we look at our communities and we think about where we live and who we are and how we live in them, we cannot extract this experience and knowledge and understanding from the broader global, or whatever you want to call them. If you don't call them global, you're going to choose another word. So I think it's very difficult to exclude outside forces, whatever you want to call them, in terms of trying to understand what we mean by interculturality.
Thank you, Pro. Thank you very much. Denise? Please.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Denise from Colombia, but I live in Barcelona and I work at Universidad Pompeu Fabra here in Barcelona. And the first question is about your own opinion, so I'm going to just throw my own opinion. I particularly think that interculturality has for a long time been based more on the global, more in those forces that Prue was saying, more the national forces, mostly taking into account these encounters of people from different origins, and these origins mostly related to the nation of like different nationalities, and how to in that case foster interculturality to like a competence that students have to develop, in my case of language education, the competence that students have to develop to encounter and to efficiently deal with that otherness of the other people from other origins and countries. And I think what this conference is telling us about is like we have to see more the local of interculturality, not to go like try to forget more about the global and try to connect it with the local. And in that case, what Professor Beatriz was saying, like trying to see that interconnectedness between the global and the local. And in that quote, something that caught my on my attention was the name cosmopolitan, but together with the idea of elite. In the quotes, like cosmopolitan elite. But in literature and in the discussion, the idea of cosmopolitanism, and especially critical cosmopolitanism, is that idea of interconnecting the global and the local. And we kind of get mistaken with the idea of cosmopolitanism with the idea of elite, together with the cosmopolitan elite. But if we really try to see cosmopolitanism from another point of view, that interconnection between the global and the local, we may have another idea of interculturality as well. Interculturality seen as something local, something that is coming from above, as Homi Bhabha was saying, or said in long time ago, cosmopolitanism is something that has roots and wings at the same time, that is rooted in the local but appealing to the global. And then how the discourse of interculturality is now changing in those terms with a critical point of view, the critical cosmopolitanism point of view. I don't know if I made myself clear. That's my
very clear, and I agree a lot. Okay, thank you very much, Denise. There is Ramzi.
Yeah, I have a comment as well, but I also want first to go back in order. Anna asked Malcolm, is it the concept of globalization or the term globalization which you resent?
Well, actually, I mean, I was just sort of babbling to get the thing started, to be honest, rather unreflectively. But I think that the trouble I have with the idea of globalization, as it is used in a lot of intercultural communication discourse, is that it's seen as quite a unique moment in the present or in recent history. And if you like, the sort of Marxist analysts that I tend to read very much support the idea that globalization's been going on for millennia in effect. So yeah, it's just that particular usage of globalization. You know, how many essays have we all read that start in the age of globalization? You know, web-based communication is very common, and therefore we get a lot of interculturality, and thus the story goes. which kind of attributes a kind of special historical moment to globalization that we're living at the moment that hasn't existed before. But in fact, globalization's taken, I believe anyway, and there are lots of people supporting this, that globalization's taken many forms in earlier moments in history, and there have been other specific modes of communication that have been associated with that. So, I mean, that just kind of fills in a bit with the globalization thing. Sorry, Ramsey, do you want to keep going with your point? I've got a couple of other things to say, and then I'll shut up for a bit.
You can go ahead with the other point if you want.
You sure? No, please, Ramsey, I'm sure you've got more to say.
He wanted to report Anna's comment from the chat.
You just go ahead, Malcolm. I will comment after that.
Okay. Can I remember what I'm saying? Yeah. No, I mean, I thought Denise was right on the point. I can't see you now. Where are you? Oh, you're there, right? You're everyone's in a different order in the screen. And it's really interesting for me that it seems to me the relationship between the global and the local seems to take a different formation depending on a sort of cultured view of the world. I'm saying that because I really have got a strong impression from this conference already, and I can see what the import of the title is. And that is that it seems to me, if I've got this correct, that within the Colombian context, the idea of interculturality sort of is a more localized concept, which I am actually very drawn towards. It's kind of new to me, or newish, or the way it's been framed by some of the, dare I say, local presentations in this conference. And I think that's absolutely great. Whereas a lot of the conceptualization of interculturality and intercultural competence and intercultural communication, all those terms that we use, seem to be used more commonly in the discourse of intercultural communication in a less localized or contextualized fashion, if I dare say that. But I think one of the real flavors I'm getting out of this conference and some of the presentation is the localized nature of interculturality that's kind of coming out. And I think that's great. That's to say the way that interculturality is conceived of is very specific to context. And I think that's really what you were saying, Denise. I'm just kind of responding and reflecting back my understanding of that.
Thank you, Malcolm. I see Ayman's hand. Ayman?
Hello, I'm here. Thank you, Malcolm. I was waiting for Ramsey's response, and then may I take over after that?
Sorry, Ramsey. Please go on, Ramsey.
All right,
I was sure you were referring to the chat. Sorry.
All right. Well, basically, I just want to stretch this, like, to make it a bit more general and refer to all the concepts that usually circulate within interculturality, let's say, because for me, intercultural communication, right now, decolonization, sense of belonging, widening participation, the international, the home, the global, and the local, they all have like a lot of meanings, and it depends on how you're approaching the concept itself. Some of them are used in a very critical way to kind of eliminate certain discourses. Other usages, which are mainly neoliberal, they co-opt the term or they hide behind the term. So basically, when you see a university saying that we are global, what does that mean exactly? What are the discourses that are taking place to make that university global? Or is global there just mobilized for certain neoliberal purposes? So for me, it's more about the usage, the discourses surrounding the concept, how it is implemented, and which structures the concept is feeding, because sometimes very critical concepts they can feed very, very rigid structures. They can create very, very essentialist definitions of individuals. So yeah, it really is really relative.
Oh, right. Thank you, Ramzi. Ayman.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Actually, my point is very much related to what Ramzi said, sorry. But I here need to add another dimension for my understanding to the idea of, you know, this international local dialect in the area of interculturality. I was thinking of the individual, and we know that we have, for any individual, the inwardly and outwardly perspectives of what is related to the self and what a person can achieve. And here I recall Ernest Bloch's principles of hope, in the sense that for each person, hope is open. And even according to Bloch, I think even committing suicide is a sort of hope. Rather than going to nothingness, person would expect something, that they go back to the womb for safety, refuge, etc. So the idea here, if we think of the individual and as a core, the core point, rather than talking about local, but how can we define localities? Now, when we talk about small countries, for example, small bits of cultures, by no definition we can find common things between those locals. So I would say that our discourse might be directed to the individuals, because in each country, in each place, people have diverse experiences with the idea of internationalization, cosmopolitan, you know, travel, migration, things like these. So rather than being limiting ourselves to the very idea of, you know, this kind of labeling, because by definition, nowadays, I believe, societies are very much fragmented, and we have emergence of a new, let's say, identities, and new even sorts of conflicts, things like these, which make the definition for the local quite difficult. But rather, if we think of the individual and make the individual the milestone, the core of our research, our understanding, we might understand what other perspectives can we start from here onwards. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Thank you. Now see Manuela, and if you don't mind, after Manuela comment, we would like to go on with another issue in order to cover at least 2 issues for this forum. We have many for you. Manuela, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. And most especially hello to Denise. And I would like to draw from what she said. I had the privilege to be in the panel, examination panel of Denise's brilliant PhD thesis. But first, I would like to congratulate the organization of this conference, and for the title as well, because the title has these 2 words, local, contextualized, global debates and local challenges, which I find perfect. And also, I would like to congratulate Claudia for these wonderful questions. And I'm going to write them down and keep them when I'm doing my writings. Basically, you know, I agree with Denise about cosmopolitanism, because I remember that I wrote somewhere about elite cosmopolitanism and deficit cosmopolitanism. So there is something more beyond what the word means. And what I find, and it links with your next question about political correctness, and you know, I'm not going to theorize about global, local. This is, you know, my immediate response, something which the global, local, cosmopolitanism, words are there for us to use them. and to use them in context. And words have concepts. And you know, what has to do with political correctness, which irritates me, is when someone uses one word, global or local or global, one of these words, and people jump and say, you know, kind of making some censorship. You should not use that because, and you know, they appeal to their own concepts and their own ideas. So every word has a concept, and concepts are not universal. And words are translated between cultures, and there are these false friends. So what is really appealing is when someone is using one word which you find odd, or you find that it's not so appropriate, just try to find out what the person means. The words are rich, have a wealth of meanings. So let's use them in context. So thank you.
Manuel, thank you very much. I think your intervention is the, you know, at least in my opinion, the best way to, you know, to conclude the discussion, because I totally agree with you. I mean, I know, sometimes I have the feeling that we waste our times to fighting against words and the others' words, mostly because we are, you know, not willing enough to understand what they mean by using those words. So I see your point. Thank you, Ramsey. Ramsey is the timekeeper, and also I know he knows that I can, you know, belong. Well, we are going into another issue, but not far from the previous one, actually, because the main topic here is global citizenship education. And here you have a definition from the UNESCO website, and I'm reading it for you. Global citizenship education aims to empower learners of all ages to assume active roles, both locally and globally. So here we are again, in building more peaceful, tolerant, inclusive, and secure societies. So the questions we would like to ask you is about your own local context. So what specific features does or should global citizenship education assume in your teaching and research context? Because the context, I mean, is the key feature here, of course. And the second question is, how does global citizenship education relate to intercultural education, which is a tricky point that we are keeping discussing with other colleagues, and still we are not there. So we will need your help, ideas on these issues. I see that again. Thank you very much, Ramsey. Ramsey has pasted the contents of this slide in the chat. Emilia, I see your hand on. Please.
Thank you. So I think that with this global citizenship education, according to the definition that's there, I mean, there's some developing of like solidarity or understanding or humility. Now I can't see it because I'm, but I wanted to say, I think that sometimes I've experienced in some content, perhaps in our language department, and I mean only in our language department, not in the rest of the university because I have no concept of it, but that it is easy to address difficulties abroad in the global context, and it is much more difficult to address difficulties in the local context because it's more uncomfortable. And so we can read easily about the troubles in Northern Ireland, but it is the threshold to addressing the troubles outside of the university doors, I find are sometimes more sensitive. And because for obvious reasons, it's, you know, a distant problem doesn't psychologically and emotionally involve, doesn't affect one as much. So I think that in developing global citizenship, it's really, really fundamental to develop like local citizenship as a starting point in how to engage with issues or conflicts.
Yeah, oh, sorry. I see another, but I don't see you. Donginjin,
Yes.
but I don't see you. Oh, okay. You. Sorry.
Am I emerging? Right.
Yes.
All right. I'm Dongjing. I'm teaching at Florida Gulf Coast University. I primarily teach intercultural communication. So I find this idea of global citizenship education in the US problematic, at least in critical intercultural communication, because our students are very much educated in this social justice and advocacy type of cultural environment, liberal and neoliberal environment, that a lot of our students believe that they should act social justice for the other. For example, actively making donations to persons of poor on the other side of the globe, for example, donating for the refugees, but without understanding what they are going through. So this also interconnected with the issue of global and local. So for my students, they easily see the local issues, for example, where they do well. I think there is the level of dwelling in it. They can see immigrants issues in Southwest Florida, but they probably couldn't understand fully what was going on in the distanced global world. So there is, in my teaching, I would say that there is always a missing link there, because it's really hard to teach outside of this, this American idea of rights and responsibility, whereas this global citizenship doesn't really talk much about rights, because this is something, it's more about my locality here, what my students are thinking about. It's more about the acting for the other, but the self and other in this process are pretty much dichotomized. It's like acting for the imagined other, whereas the other culture become essentialized, become poor, become local, become indigenous or underdeveloped. And it's really hard to challenge this level of understanding, this type of global citizenship, this imagined idea of social justice and advocacy. I know I'm talking on another level now, but yeah, I'm sure some of you may experience the same similar challenges. Anyway, I'll just end here.
Many thanks. Yeah, I'll give the floor to Ramzi. Now it's your turn, Ramzi.
All right. Of all the terms that exist in intercultural communication that I came across in the last 4 years, I think the most term I resent is global citizenship. It is a term that is commodified to a point where interculturality has turned into a set of soft skills that if you follow the right model, you will end up being an intercultural citizen or global citizen, which I resent so much. I've never seen an approach interculturality that way. Teaching students, working with students, researching with participants, I've never seen interculturality that way, but it is the dominant discourse out there. That's how it is, that's how it is framed. The second thing is I want to relate it to a very nice paper by Malcolm and Adrian Holiday in October 2020, where they talked about something called post-positivist recidivism. I see global citizenship as another manifestation of post-positivist recidivism. It's just another form of positivism that is circulating, because actually what is happening is a recognition of diversity, but it's also some form of encapsulating that diversity within some form of very strict national border that you cannot cross by any means, which is not the case at all. So I'm not sure whether I'm making any sense here, because I've started using some terms, but yeah, this is just my personal take on it.
Wow, thank you very much, Ramsey. And I give the floor to Denise and then Malcolm.
Okay, thank you very much. For me, it was very interesting that you showed this quote by UNESCO, because UNESCO actually proposes like the typical 3 factors of interculturality: the cognitive, socio-affective, and the behavioral. So in those 3, like the cognitive has to do also with the critical positioning, the socio-affective, like the way we develop a sense of belonging to the local, but also to the global, and how we become like this idea of the cosmopolitan being. And the behavioral, that it was mostly what Amelia was talking, or who talked before, like the acting, right? Like, sorry, Dongjing, like the idea of citizens have to act. So it becomes like activism, and then they need to do something in the society. And it starts like to be in the idea of these 3 compartments, mostly related to the behavioral idea of citizenship has to do with that. And I think we need to transform that, not to pay too much attention to that behavioral point of view of citizenship, but more in the, as the previous person said, more in the individual, like this idea of, okay, the sense of belonging, yes, but who am I, like the identity also, not too much in the acting. And see maybe the behavioral part, or more like a transformative action to the self and transformative action to the society, but from a critical stand as well. No, like imposed by frameworks, like all those frameworks that start to appear, like you have to do this, you have to do that, and the intercultural citizen, like the interculturally competent citizen has to be like that, or has to act like that, or feel like that, because then starts to be also the positivist idea of interculturality. But that's my opinion.
Thank you very much, Denise. Malcolm, yes.
Yeah. Thanks very much for that. And I'm going along with you completely. And I just wanted to say, really, unsurprisingly, I completely agree with everything Ramsey said. And I can't really say it certainly better than that. I mean, you've obviously been thinking about this for quite some time, and probably read much more widely than me. But I mean, and also I think Dongjing has illustrated perfectly how the idea of citizenship, again, is localized. I mean, it's presented by UNESCO as this universal concept, but already we can sense, well, I can see a difference in the US, how shall we say, applications of this from the applications I've sort of picked up in Europe. But just to put it very brutally, I think this is a powerful ideological political concept. I mean, it's aligned to certain liberal democratic values coming out of, certain hegemonic countries and advocates. And I could see that, pragmatically, some of us might well take this on board. It's tied, of course, to money, research grant funding, and that's what this forum is about, I believe. So that, I guess, for periods of our lives may well tie us up in subscribing to certain official manifestations of global citizenship in our research. I've done that sort of thing myself. I'm not kind of pointing any fingers here. But yeah, I mean, I like Ramsey would swerve away from this concept, actually, in my own work. I can't wait to see what Iman's got to say about it. This is going to be truly terrifying.
Me too. Ayman?
Go for it, Ayman.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for this, Malcolm. Actually, I need to approach it from another perspective. That is, if we think of any society, now we are thinking of whether maybe the lenses are now on the Western societies, because mainly they are the host societies for those migrants and immigration, But here we are talking mainly about two, let's say, national discourses in terms of this idea of integration, interculturality, etc. We're talking about those loud voices of nationalism and protecting the localities, the national, etc. And on the other side, we are talking about those who are against this. So in principle, we are talking about two major long issues, that is cultural compatibility versus cultural incompatibility. And I would say that both discourses or both approaches fail to capture the essence of the human, let's say, mobility nowadays. Now, beneath those two stories or narratives, cultural narratives, I would say that there is an invisible narrative, or let's say, use this term, a not yet told narrative, that is the narrative of those people, okay, who are influential, but at the same time silent. You see the point? Those people in each society, we are talking about people who would, let's say, embrace those ideas of interculturality, embrace this idea of negotiating with otherness, or in definition, they might not, let's say, define the other as another, okay, and not within bringing that the other in the realm of the self, etc. But the idea is that because the let's say the idea or the clear cut between the self and the other now are no longer an issue to them. So how can we arrive at this kind of, let's say, understanding in societies, in my estimation? How can we make those invisible voices rather visible in the way they express their own ideas about this? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ayman. Thank you very much. May I add something as well, because I mean, this is a tricky point for me. Yeah, now after this forum, I would like to think further of your opinions about this point, because initially I thought that global citizenship education was a fancy expression to say something very similar to what I call intercultural education. Because actually it depends on how you define intercultural education, of course. But for my studies and what I'm, the association I'm happy to be part of, it's intercultural education has always meant to be committed in self-reflection, criticality, and issues of powers and difference in terms of disequality to be committed to social justice anyhow. So if I define the intercultural education in this sense, as most of us do, then I don't see the difference with what people call global citizenship education, yeah, so that's my initial point. That's it. So, but now after your interventions, I have additional food for thought. So thank you very much. Ramzi.
Yeah, I just want to add to the discussion with some more comments. At first, like I used to, at some point in my research, I used to approach global citizenship with a lot of resentment. But as time went and I started looking critically into that, I started to actually see how people navigate the usage of the term. I've seen that, like, for instance, the OECD made like a very massive grant and research in Europe and the whole world, actually. And the way global citizenship is, it's about global citizenship, but they wanted a particular understanding of global citizenship, maybe one that would follow certain model, for instance, Deerdorf's model of intercultural competence, and create some form of interculturality, which for me, I think is problematic. So basically, I started to question like the positionality of the positions of researchers within intercultural communication. It's really tricky when you are reading an article to distinguish between someone who is navigating the discourses and using a term in a particular way for the sake of navigating, but to show some criticality at the same time, or some other person who would just reproduce the global citizenship problematic discourse, which is literally like neoliberal. It's really tricky, and I stopped like condemning people who make use of the term, but at the same time, I reach at some points where when I read an abstract or I go through an introduction, at some point I just stop, like, okay, I cannot carry on because I know where is this going, and I know that this will not convince me because I'm not convinced from the very beginning. So yeah. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I really advise you to read Ferry's book, Intercultural Communication, Critical Approaches and Future Challenges, because it deals with ethics and interculturality, basically Leibnizian ethics, but on the same time, it has a very good take on global citizenship and intercultural competence. So I think you should give it like some time, maybe.
Yeah, that's Juliana Ferry, isn't it?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ramsey, and thank you all. And now we are toward the end, and I'm giving the floor to Mario, who is making a summary of our lively and very interesting discussion.
Well, again, I would like to thank you for this interesting discussion. I've been learning so much from your field. So I have a slide here. I'm not going to show it to you because it's important to keep the camera. So I'm going to read the points that I have taken from the discussion, all right? I really try to do my best to get the most general things, right? So for the first topic, which was global debates and local challenges, we started the discussion by focusing on the difference in the use of the terms, right? Like how people use these terms depending on the context. So something that I wrote here is that concepts are not universal, right? So the context shapes the real use and meaning of the terms for a particular context. So back to the idea, the context is really important because it shapes the use of certain terms, right? Then, as one participant mentioned, societies are fragmented nowadays, so it's more difficult to define what local actually means. It also depends on the size of the country or the society, right? So this part is really important to consider. Also, we talked about criticism towards the term globalization because, well, not just the term, but the concept per se seems to be taking different forms, again, depending on the context, the historical time, etc. Then somebody talked about the term local, which seems to be gaining popularity. And this is a term that I like very much because it seems to combine, both views, global and local, so it's a great way to see it. But again, we go back to the discussion of what actually means. It all depends on the context, right? Also, one of the participants said that interculturality seems to be focused on the global or the foreign rather than the local relationships. And I think that's a really valid point as well. And finally, a recommendation is we need to focus more on the local. We need to see interculturality more as a global thing, which has both roots and wings. And Denise, I just stole that phrase from you. I think it was lovely to see it that way, right? So that's our first topic. And then for the second topic, which is global citizenship education, one of the participants said that if people don't understand what others are going through or what others are experiencing, it'll be very difficult for them to develop global citizenship skills. There's also some debate, like there are some debates here about what global citizenship actually means, because it's sometimes seen as something that like people must act, and it's like people must imitate the ideal social behaviors, right? But we must not focus on that. We must focus on the individual, how people perceive themselves, what they think their identities are, etc. Also, somebody said that global citizenship education models are somehow taken as another form of post-positivism. And Ramsey, you talked about that. And this issue is many times related to funding and money making, which is something that we don't want, right? And finally, the relationship or the similarities and differences between global citizenship education and intercultural education. If both are related or have to do with self-reflection, power balance, social justice, then what is the difference between those two, right? And Claudia raised that issue at the end. And that's what I have here in my slides, so, right? That's all I could take. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario. And I see Ramsey, yeah. And now, do you mind if we take a picture of the forum? But in order to do that, I like to ask you the permission to post the picture on the IALIC website in the forum section. And of course, we need your faces and smiles, possibly.
Yeah, it would be great
so
if you can
do you
turn on your
mind
webcam.
turning your cameras on? Oh,
Yeah.
hi, man. Nice to meet you.
Just for seconds.
Just for a few seconds. And of course, if you don't want to have your picture on the IALIC website, just keep your camera off, no problem. Grazie.
Yeah, okay. All right. Perfect. Yeah, I took three photos. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ramsey, and thank you all for your participation. And may I ask an additional favor? Because with the IALIC Management Committee, we are imagining the future of the research forum for the next year. And if you have any idea of how the association can be of help for your networking and your research work, in any case, I mean, if you have ideas, please feel free to write to me, and I will report your ideas to the committee. And yeah, thank you very much for your participation again. And from me, from Ramsey, Mario, and for the IALIC committee. Grazie. In Italian as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Ramsey, before you leave, I want to capture you with last question. Can I ask one last question? Because Ramsey said you resented about the global citizenship, but I wonder if you would prefer to use the word peoplehood.
Actually, yeah, I don't mind using any term, just for a record. What made me resent global citizenship is literally how it is approached, like within the university, within the projects I work on, with what people think about it when someone tells me I'm a global citizen, and then they start talking about how they know different cultures and what other people eat and stuff like that, and it just scratches the surface of the cultural realities that surround us. So that's why I resent the term, not the term itself, but what is really beneath the term and how it comes. Actually, 3 months ago, received a grant for £2,000 to do something in relation to that, a research for university, but I refuse to do that. Although, like, I still don't have a full-time job, but I refuse that simply because I don't believe in that. But I don't know. That's what made me think about my fellow colleagues. Till when can I like give in? Till when can I not give in to these discourses? Till when can I not just say no for things just because I don't think it is the most like ideal way to approach global citizenship? So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just proposing a new term. It's less sexy than global citizenship. I normally use intercultural personhood or peoplehood. Yeah, anyway. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Yeah,
Continue.
thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thank you,
Bye
everyone.
bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Move on to the break. All right. Enjoy the break.
Congrats, Claudia. Very good job.
Very good.
Me,
yes.
you, both of you. I mean, it was really, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. Did you like it?
Yeah, it was so nice. I liked your questions as well. The open debate, and yeah, they allow people to actually say good things about interculturality. So yeah.
Thank you. Very
And it's
bello. I
especially
really enjoyed it, and now I'm planning to have, you know, oh, how many participants are here? I'm planning to have more, more of these sessions. I really want to make appointments also, you know, every 6 months or something, not only at the
Yeah,
conference.
It's really good because, like, you know, like, to be honest, I have academics whom I look forward, like, to hear from and to see how they think, and to have an event where, like, every now and then, okay, you see someone say, okay, this is my point, this is my criticality, this is how I approach things in this form of lovely debate. It's really nice. It's really illuminating for other people as well.
Yeah, and then as you said, Mario, sorry, I interrupted you.
no, I was gonna say that it's so illuminating for everyone attending the, you know, this particular activity, because we can learn from each other's and we can take ideas from each other so can be applied in our context, you know. And I think that's so enriching. It's so enriching. So it's fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you again. Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of the conference, all right? I'll see you later.
You too.
All right.
Ciao, ciao.